Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Review. Alongside Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. Coming up on the big show, it's finals week in youth football. How about the Pasadena Chargers and Gork? I believe for the 6th consecutive season, meeting in the varsity final. These teams, as they've gradually gone up through the weight classes, just been a remarkable run for both of these teams as they get set to go at it at Chesapeake High School coming up on Saturday night at 6 o'clock. And tip of the cap to SCYA. Granted, it's down in that central bracket, which is for the teams that have multiple teams usually. This is the only team SCYA has had. And as this group has come up, I believe they had not won a game at one point in 4 years.
Oh, man.
They are in the championship game Friday night.
What a turnaround.
At South River High School.
Can you run us down the schedule, Pete? We obviously have multiple divisions of youth football, so I believe there'll be games Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Can you give us
Correct.
the brief schedule?
You're going to have central games on Friday night. You're going to have some on Sunday over at Chesapeake High School. Friday night action going to be at South River. You can go to the Anne Arundel County website, aacounty.org, click on the team schedules. There's a specific one for playoff brackets. It's right there. You can click on whatever weight class you want. All the American action starts on Saturday at noon. All of those games at Chesapeake High School. So it's going to be a great weekend to celebrate youth football here in the area. It could be a great weekend for football, period.
And we urge the parents, we know it's a championship day and you're getting very excited because you're that close to winning it all, but we urge sportsmanship, good behavior. A few years ago, I saw something I've never seen at a youth football championship day. I'm not even going to talk about what it was, but it was deplorable. Yeah, we had a parent go on the field and assault a referee. It was at youth championship day, the celebration of the youth football season, and we had to have that kind of deplorable behavior.
And guess what, Bill? It was a mom. Yeah. It was a mom.
Mom, dads, all relatives. Please
stay in the stands.
Stay in the stands, cheer, positive. That's what we ask.
It's exactly right. Whether your kids win or lose this weekend, they're all champions.
That's right.
Having made it to this point in their season. High schools, the teams we have come to know at this time of the year, back again. Old Mill, they just don't lose in the regular season, Bill. And Friday night, they probably needed a little bit of magic, a little bit of good fortune, a little bit of abracadabra, but they got it. They put themselves in position when they got a couple of breaks to come back and defeat Annapolis at all 15 of their points over really the last fourth quarter and the last minute or so of the third quarter. But, you know, they get the big pass play to Ja'Cory Cannon from Blaze Fisher, 56 yards. They get the extra point. They beat Annapolis 15-14, and that means, A, they're going to host Broadneck, which gives Old Mill a little bit of an advantage. Yeah. Very familiar with their foe, having played them. Certainly a lot better than what Annapolis has to do playing a North Point team who I'm sure they've scouted and have filmed. But when you haven't played that team, you know, you don't know how fast they're playing. You don't know, tendencies and guys' instincts of certain players out there on the field. So Old Mill gets a huge advantage by playing a team they're familiar with at home. And if both Old Mill and Annapolis win, Old Mill gets the home game against Annapolis for all the marbles there.
Right. Well, first of all, it's just a shame what happened to Annapolis. They had two snaps on punts that went over the punter's head and set up Old Mill with great field. Well, one, the punter wisely kicked the ball out of the end zone to avoid a touchdown. Instead, he got a safety. Yeah. But two special teams plays really turned things around there. And Annapolis has to feel like they let this one get away. And so if by chance these two teams do meet again, I think Annapolis would have confidence that they can beat Old Mill. They had them, and they just kind of let that game slip away at the end. But Annapolis, if they played Old Mill again, I would not be surprised to see them beat Old Mill.
You have to put Bob Hoke to work in that Capital Gazette office, because you look at what Old Mill is doing right now. This is one of the best runs in a regular season of any team.
I think it's 33 straight games.
It's one of the best runs in regular season history in Anne Arundel County.
Oh, it's remarkable. And again, we have a good county. There are a lot of teams that could potentially beat Old Mill over the course of a season. And for them to not have any slip-ups is just remarkable.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And obviously they'll play on Friday night. Both those games are Friday night, 7 o'clock kickoffs. Remember, playoffs, kickoffs are at 7, not 6:30.
State mandated.
State mandated 7 o'clock kickoff coming up. But I would urge you, and look, especially if those two play again, they had like 3,400 people there the other night.
It was remarkable. I think our reporter said that the cars were parked all the way down that one road. They had to stop selling tickets. I mean, it was an overflow crowd, which, great for high school football. It was first time in anyone's memory that there was two undefeated teams meeting at the end of the year. So great night for Anne Arundel County High School football.
Arundel finishes off in style. They beat Severna Park 60-41. Ryan Sedgwick threw for 335 and 6 scores. Darius Hunter ran for 154 and had 3 touchdowns himself in this game. Good way for them to go out. Their season kind of spiraled in the middle part there, but a nice job by those kids at Arundel and for Chuck Markowitz and their staff to get that thing going. They really had some nice momentum going here toward the end of the season again.
Yeah, and I think that they have a good amount of kids coming back. I think they were a little young. They had suffered heavy graduation losses the year before. So Arundel may be, as you said, a good springboard into 2017. Disappointing way for Severna Park to finish out. They had a really positive season going, and they lost their arch rival Broadneck and then closed with I was a little surprised by that result. It was a little Arundel got after
Not
them.
that Arundel won, but putting 60 points up.
Because Severna Park plays good defense, and so a little bit of a disappointing finish for the Falcons.
Good year for Joe Jennings for Severna Park. He's likely an all-county candidate for the Falcons.
Absolutely.
Had a super season all year long. Jason Carcamo, the latest guy in the Broadneck backfield to find some production. 219 yards on 16 carries. Broadneck secures that final playoff spot, beating Southern by a score of 35-7. North County beats Chesapeake 44-20. Tommy McNamara with a couple of touchdowns. How about St. Mary's? They ended the year, and again, when all of a sudden you see names pop up, you don't know where Donald Day was at the beginning of the year. But boy, since he became a high-profile guy in the St. Mary's offense, that team's fortunes changed drastically. What a ball game between them and Severn on Friday night, a 22-20 thriller that St. Mary's wins on a field goal late. And
great sportsmanship. You got to. These are arch rivals. Severn wants to beat St. Mary's. It's Army-Navy of Anne Arundel County high school football. And afterwards, both coaches were very positive about the game, about each other. It was great to see the sportsmanship displayed between those two sides. They know each other so well. A lot of those kids play lacrosse together in the off-season, etc. But you're right, Donald Day, I would have to say he rushed for like 800 yards in just the last 4 games. And as you mentioned,
close, yeah.
We were not seeing his name in the roundups early in the season, so I don't know what happened, if he, but he helps turn around St. Mary's this season. And Jason Bedroni, their head coach, said he's got 19 starters coming back. So he is very positive about next year. And I think Chris Kirchenreiter, the Severn coach, said the same thing. Both teams, it looks like good things on the horizon for them next season.
Sean Phelan won the game with a 24-yard field goal. Day finished with 151 yards rushing in the contest. Spalding finished off their season in fine fashion, beating Gilman by a score of 42-0. Julius Chestnut and Fachman guys both had terrific years. They were in the middle of all the big plays, it seemed like, offensively for Spalding all season long. And I think what's good for the A Conference is where this league for a little while seemingly was Gilman and everybody else after that. Now it does seem like St. Francis has taken over with a lot of Gilman's players obviously transferring over there. But this year you just felt that the A Conference was a lot more competitive, was a much deeper conference. And we saw that with all the different teams beating each other down the stretch when we saw the big-time teams get together here over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, the conference has changed. Obviously, I mean, who would have ever imagined Spalding drubbing Gilman the way they did? But obviously things changed at Gilman. Biff Pogge left. He was on the sidelines of the Maryland-Michigan game because he's now coaching at Michigan, where his son's a player. And a lot of those Gilman kids transferred either to St. Francis or their quarterback, who's going to Maryland's now at St. John's in D.C. So basically they got wiped out. All of their best players left, and that you're seeing the results on the field. I think, doesn't Spalding still have to play Mount St. Joseph? I believe that game is
probably
this week. I think they still have that game to play because St. Joe lost to St. Francis this win.
Right.
I knew that Spalding and St. Joe close out the season. I believe that game's this Friday night at Spalding. But great year for the Cavaliers, and again a huge Julius Chestnut. We talk a lot about Evan Fogman, but Julius Chestnut's had a heck of a year.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And our boy Sam Akinmukomi,
AACS,
they are into the C Conference Championship game again. They'll play at Spalding for the championship beating Capital Christian this week by a score of 20-6. And, Big Sam every week for AACS. This time it was a pass that he caught from Isaiah Williams, 56 yards for the go-ahead and clinching score for AACS.
We're going to have to call him Big Play Sam because every time we see the result, he has some sort of big, long gainer. I'd like to go back and compile some of his big plays, but you were talking a lot of explosive plays from Sam, and you mentioned about All-County. I think he's very deserving of consideration, even though he's just a sophomore.
Sam I am, big game I am, as he'll try and win the C Conference for Annapolis Area Christian School. That's a look at our high school slate for this week. Coming up, Bill and I were in beautiful Jacksonville where, we saw something that's only happened 13 times and 90 meetings. Navy beating Notre Dame. We'll talk about that when we return on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back. Navy midshipmen going to Jacksonville to take on Notre Dame. Over 50,000 in the stands. I think the attendance figure was wrong because they actually sold more than 55,000 tickets.
I talked to Matt Munnelly, the Navy team. They sold 55,000 tickets, so I don't know if they had no shows.
I think the official figure was somewhere up around 58. They announced 50, but we know there was over 50,000 people there. What a great stadium that the Jaguars there at Everbank Field. And the Gator Bowl people put on a great game. Really made it easy. I know as a broadcaster, it was one of the easiest games we've ever had in an NFL stadium. But what a ball game. And the legend, as you wrote in your story, a very simple, easy lead, and I thought it was spot on. The legend of Will Worth continues now for the Navy midshipman as he is fourth in the country with rushing TDs with 15 after Navy beats Notre Dame 28-27. And Irish fans just beside themselves on message boards saying, the officials feel sorry for Navy. They're giving them calls. Well, these were your officials, Notre Dame. These were not Navy's officials. I mean, these are ACC guys on the field there. And, they missed two blatant face masks, one against Will Worth, one on Dyson Roman, and they missed a huge pass interference penalty.
Right.
That the only reason
they made up for it.
They didn't make up for it because the kid for Notre Dame committed pass interference on the next penalty.
Right.
And they had to throw the flag there. But how about Navy? Last 7:28 of the game, Bill, they put the game on ice. And, look, they run the triple option offense. But on 4th and 6, Ivan Jasper called a pass play. Brilliant. And Will Worth fired a bullet to Jameer Tillman. Game over.
Well, Will Worth, what a story this is. The guy is a third-string quarterback for 2 years. He thinks he's going to spend his senior season holding on place kicks as he has done the previous year. And thrust into the starting role, he has just gotten better and better and is playing at a really high level. And I don't think even the Navy coaches thought, Kenny Niumatalolo said it. They said, "Are you surprised?" He's like, "Well, yeah, I am." I hate to say it because they didn't know the kid had it in him. They somewhat limited athletically, but he does the job. I tell you what, he showed speed I'd never seen before on that one run, and they just killed Notre Dame with that one counter option play. It took an entire half for Notre Dame to figure out what was going on. Will Worth just kept ripping off yardage on this cutback play. But a terrific performance by the mids, and as you mentioned, Pete, the Irish go for a field goal late to get within one, thinking they'll get the ball back. 7:28 left, figure get a stop, get the ball back, we can win with the field goal. I don't question that call by Brian Kelly, but the mids eating up over 7 minutes off the clock. That's classic.
Yeah, but how about Notre Dame? Contributing to their own demise in this game as well with 12th man on the field penalty that allows Navy to go from 4th and 6 to 4th and 1. They, of course, convert the first down and then to go down and eventually score. So, the Irish, this is a team. All 6 of their losses are by a touchdown or less, 8 points or less every game. But, you keep losing. You are who you are. You are who your record says you are. Deshaun Kaiser was decent, but not great in this game.
You expect
several wide open wide receivers. And this is a guy that people think could be one or two in the NFL draft. So it's a Notre Dame team still loaded with terrific skilled people, but the mids come up with a victory. 4th time in the last 10 years that Navy has gotten this victory, and now it sets up a remarkable scenario in Annapolis this week. You've got 3 rushers in this game who are in the national top 50 in rushing yardage. In fact, Tulsa's got one guy, D'Angelo Brewer, who is 17 yards away from giving Tulsa a second 1,000-yard rusher on the season. James Flanders is already over 1,000 yards. So This is going to be a remarkable test of wills of the running game coming up on Saturday between Tulsa and Navy. High noon in Annapolis for the Western Division lead.
Yeah, and this could very well determine who's going to represent the West in the American Athletic Conference Championship. Got to give Phil Montgomery and his staff a lot of credit. Tulsa has really turned it around. They took over last year, and they were decent, but last year Navy really put it on them out there in Tulsa. So this is a big showdown. Two teams are tied atop the West Division in the AAC, and Tulsa, just like Houston, like Memphis, like South Florida, they can really put up the points. They're scoring, 40, 50. I think they've gone up 50. They've been in the high 50s, haven't they, this year?
A couple times.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens coming up on Saturday at noon. Meanwhile, Maryland traveled to Michigan, and look, you knew that beating Michigan State was not really a barometer of where this Big Ten was for Maryland. Last week and this coming week with Ohio State, these are the two games that are going to give you a barometer of just where you are. And we found out Maryland, as expected, because they have no quarterback play, is just so far away from the top clubs in this league right now. And I'm not sure if it's just as simple as getting a quarterback, but boy, it'll make their life a lot easier when they have a quarterback who can make some plays. Michigan knew they had to run the ball the other day, and when Michigan and Ohio State know that's what you have to do,
not going to happen.
It's pretty easy to stop.
Right. Well, Jim Harbaugh, treating his ex-assistant poorly, DJ Durkin, kind of the little brother pat on the head. You got a long way to go, kid. Maryland is just not ready for prime time, and they've had a lot of injuries. They're starting two freshmen at cornerbacks. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're having to play a lot of true and redshirt freshmen. They're just, the depth isn't there, and they can't afford these injuries. Perry Hills went down, ended up putting Caleb Rowe in because they had to throw the ball, and Terrell Pigram is not a thrower. He can run, but when you're behind and need to throw the ball downfield, Caleb Rowe gives you a little better shot. The problem with Caleb Rowe is you never know who he's going to throw it to. He is a dangerous, so many times he puts it in possible interceptions, but Maryland's just not there yet, and this game showed it, as you mentioned, Pete. You know
who'd be a great quarterback in Walt Bell's offense?
Who?
Will Worth.
Yeah, he probably would be, right?
He throws good enough.
Yep.
And obviously he can run. Power runner.
A lot of guys at Navy could play for Maryland. Wow. That's kind of what's happening. Navy's a better program than Maryland. That's obvious.
We've seen that at least for right now, but I believe DJ Durkin will get them going on the good foot. All they got to do is beat Rutgers in the final game. They'll go to a bowl game.
And that would be a step forward.
Absolutely. Coming up, the Ravens and the Steelers got together. Big Ben, just a couple of weeks after knee surgery, taking a risk. It did not come out with a reward. We'll talk about that when we come back on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back. One of our cameramen, Cisco, wearing his Ravens shirt proudly today because I give him grief every week the Ravens lose as he stands there behind the camera, but not this week. Got to give him some praise, probably kicking back in his smoking jacket with some incense burning yesterday as the Ravens beat the Steelers by a score of 21-14. Now, this was not a great game from either side, but, what's up with Joe Flacco? I mean, that's my one question as it pertains to the Ravens. Clearly, and again, it takes guys a while to come back from these ACL tears. He's not quite right mechanically, especially with his feet right now.
Yeah, he's not planning.
But, he got the one ball he needed to Mike Wallace, and then Wallace turned on the Jets after the missed tackle by the Steelers and got them that big play early that kind of gave them and got the crowd into the game and really, I thought, made a difference. And, Ben Roethlisberger looked like a guy who hadn't played in a couple weeks in the first half. The Ravens got after him from a pass rush perspective. I mean, Terrell Suggs, who's not 100%, he got in there one time, really harassed Roethlisberger. They got a tip ball that was intercepted by Timmy Jernigan. And, you got to give the Ravens a lot of credit the way that they played yesterday. I thought it was one of their best efforts defensively. It's one of the few times we've seen them consistently get after and harass the quarterback. They made Roethlisberger move around when he really didn't want to do that because of his knee. And the Ravens end up getting a big victory. Hey, right now they're in first place in the AFC North because they've got the tiebreaker with a head-to-head win of the Steelers, both teams, at a whopping 4-4.
Yeah, well, this division is down, to say the least. Great defensive effort, I thought, by the Ravens. Kind of old-school Ravens, really pound you. I mean, they've got weapons. I mean, you're talking about Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. I mean, it's not just Ben Roethlisberger.
Right.
So, great effort by the Ravens defense, but they've got a lot of things they've got to improve. And Joe Flacco's at the top of the list. You're going to have to get better quarterback play if you want to do anything, be a playoff team. To his defense, the offensive line is just not doing the job. And Ronnie Stanley came back from his injury that forced him to miss several games.
Multiple holding calls in this game.
He was terrible. He had played really poorly, and he looked like a guy that hadn't played football in a few weeks. So they've got some offensive line issues, and that affects your running game, which they have none. And also Joe Flacco doesn't feel comfortable, obviously, standing in the pocket and throwing because he doesn't feel like he's going to get protected.
Yeah, but you know what? They got football's version of Robitussin coming up this week. The Cleveland Browns. Whenever you're ill, you want to take some Robitussin, just call the Cleveland Browns. We got roasted by the Cowboys 35-10. The one thing is this is a Thursday night game. So
all the Thursday night games stink. Every Thursday night game this year has just been terrible. I don't know who is coming up with these matchups, but I mean,
everybody's got to play on Thursday or Sunday night. They've got to have a primetime game.
But they're pushing it. They're wondering why the ratings are down. Look at what the product they're putting out there on Thursday night.
No doubt.
It used to be the NFL could put any game on a national television if it was an odd night like a Thursday, Monday, or Sunday night, and people would watch because it's NFL football. That's not the case anymore. Their ratings are down.
I had this discussion with some fans the other day, and I thought the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was valid. Obviously, over the last 15 years, we've been really fortunate. 15, 20 years, we were blessed with some superstars in this game.
Yeah,
guys that no matter what team they played on or whatever, you had to watch if they were on your television. Outside of a Tom Brady who executes at a high level right now, maybe an Aaron Rodgers to a certain extent, but what player out there? Who are those players that galvanize you to the TV that say, "Hey, I've got to watch him play"? There's no Barry Sanders.
Yep.
There's no Joe Montanas. There's nobody that galvanizes you that says, "Hey, I've got to get to my TV and watch that guy play." And I think that's an interesting problem right now for the National Football League.
It's a great point. Well, look at this matchup of Cleveland and Baltimore.
Who's watching that Thursday night outside of the most ardent Brown or Raven fan?
Right. I mean, there's nothing compelling about that game. And as you mentioned, no superstar players that you just have got to see. And then the Redskins on a bye week, but your Redskins will be back on Sunday.
That's right. Right now we're in the sixth and final playoff spot in the NFC, getting set to take on the Purple People Eaters, the Minnesota Vikings, coming up this week, who've lost three in a row after starting the year, 5-0. So we'll see. But Redskins, of course, going to be without Trent Williams for 4 weeks, suspended due to a violation of the league's substance abuse policy. Yeah. In fact, he got the first one expunged because it had been so long ago. So you get another chance to compile 1 missed test, 2 missed tests, 3 missed tests. Okay, the 4th missed test. All right, you got to go. 4 games for Trent Williams. We'll see what Ty Nsekhe does at left tackle for the Redskins as they play the Vikings next week. That'll do it for our show. Please get on out to many of the different locations, South River, Chesapeake, all weekend long with our youth football championships this weekend. Go to aacounty.org and click on the team schedules. And under football, you'll see the playoff brackets. Just click on those. Again, 6 o'clock Saturday night for the Chargers and Gork in the varsity American game. These teams have been the top enchilada in their age groups over the past few years, and they have another great addition before they all end up going to high school next year. For Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. Thanks for joining us this week on the Gridiron Review.